Welcome into Down to the Wire. I'm Brian Costa,
I'm Carter Adams.
and it's good to be back on a Friday night. I mean, the weekend, it seems like the weekend's upon us, but, uh,
Class is Saturday. It doesn't really feel like it.
it really doesn't feel like it's going to be too much of this weekend's going to be very short for
Very
us.
short, yep.
But we still wanted to get into, everything happening in the sports world. But before we do, it's been today in American history. It's a 19 years since the tragic attack on our country, New York City, Washington D.C. Just a very somber day, September 11, 2001.
Always important to remember. Keep
Yeah.
it in the back of our heads, especially on this day.
Yeah. Just wanna say to anyone who was affected by this tragedy, which for many Americans was all of us. We extend our deepest condolences, and I think that even though it's been almost 20 years, healing is always gonna be a part of coming together through this.
Definitely. I mean, the world saw a lot of change after 9/11. We're going through some similar kind of changes today. It's important to always remember.
Yeah. All right. Let's try to lighten up the mood a little bit. But I mean, even though it's a very unfortunate day in American history, let's try to Let's try to lighten up the mood and talk some sports.
Definitely.
All right. So, in football news, the season is back. I mean, we're back.
We're back. It felt pretty weird, especially seeing fans in that stadium last night.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so for anyone who missed it, I don't know how you could have, but the Kansas City Chiefs and Houston Texans, were played in the season opener last night. It was definitely weird seeing fans in the stands after all the talks of COVID that we've had. You would have thought that would have been an impossibility going into this year.
Definitely, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense, especially in Missouri. The numbers must not be too bad if they're able to still have 17,000 fans in the stadium.
Definitely.
It looked like they were pretty well spread out.
Yeah, I mean, they probably had families situated together, but everyone, I mean, it seemed fairly spread out, but I was definitely surprised to see stadiums with fans in it because, from everything we've heard from just around the league and from different people, it didn't seem like that was going to be the case.
Yeah,
now, I don't think that New England and other organizations like them will be having fans in the stands, but down south, it's going to be really interesting seeing what these teams are going to end up doing.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers down south, like I said, must be a lot different than up here.
Yeah.
Their attitude about the whole thing must be a lot different than up here as
Yeah.
well. I can hope that at some point this season we'll see fans in all the stadiums.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope. I mean, if a vaccine can, if that is the saving grace to all this, I mean, a lot of people don't think it is, but if that could be the saving grace to this whole thing, and we can get back to some semblance of regular fans and just regular football just in the near future, I would say I'm hoping. I really am hoping.
And when we bring up this whole distancing thing and the coronavirus restrictions in the league, what I didn't really understand last night, I think you actually pointed this out to me. These players can hit each other, touch each other, wrestle with each other all game.
Yeah.
But as soon as the game's over, Pat Mahomes has to throw on a mask for his interview.
Yeah, I just completely don't get it. I think that it's smart that the coaches have to wear them throughout the game because I mean you're on the sidelines with these guys. And you know what? I mean, you look at a guy like Andy Reid who was wearing basically just a space helmet last night. I mean,
face shield.
I don't know how he could see out of that thing, but he was just wearing this giant face shield. And I mean, it's odd to me that the coaches, have to, abide by these guidelines, but the players really can kind of just do what they want. And if it spreads between players, it's going to happen.
Definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people expect it to happen, especially between the players. Like I said, they're pushing each other around all game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give credit to the NFL where it's due though because they do have these new wristbands basically where if any of the players come into do end up testing positive, I don't know if it's via computer program or how they do it, but apparently they're able to go back and see okay, if this person tested positive, he was near this person for over a certain minutes of time. That's usually that's usually the amount of time in which COVID spreads, so you can go and try to isolate those players.
I mean, all we can hope for is that those bracelets that you're just talking about are effective enough where we can still have the rest of the season go on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the type of situation where, I mean, you also hope that the players can, be smart and just, I know football is it's a difficult life, and I know that when you're out there, like you want to probably go like out on the town and like go explore, the city and stuff like that. But here's the thing, it's a very different season this year. I think a lot of players, this is going to test a lot of mental fortitude of a lot of these guys, and I think they're just going to have to buckle down and say, how bad do we want it this year?
I think the NBA, well, I said last week that they were doing this whole bubble thing the best. Now that I look at it, I really don't know, because it almost seems like when you don't have to worry about a bubble, there's a lot of things that come with that you also don't have to worry about. In the NBA, for example, we'll get into it later, Daniel House, he just violated some sort of protocol in the bubble,
and now he's leaving.
If we were to do that in the NFL now, it's not an issue.
It's really just a slap on the wrist.
I think,
and as long as you were to test negative,
coronavirus will become like an injury to players. They'll just have to sit out.
I mean, talking about that, I mean, if a quarterback, like say Mahomes, goes down in a basically just like a nighttime showtime game, like that's going to be an incredible depletion for a team. I mean, just imagine like if before game time you get notification that Cam Newton has coronavirus, or Patrick Mahomes was near one of his tackles who just tested
and there's
positive.
Nothing you can do about it either.
And that's the thing about it. So I think a lot of fans are going to have questions about this year, just being like, how legitimate is this season if my quarterback goes down in a game that we easily would have won, but then we have to throw Chad Henne or whatever backup quarterback we have on the field when we know that guy isn't nearly as good.
I mean, it poses a very strict advantage to some teams, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, you look at a situation of teams that might be able to, benefit and might be able to survive it. You look at possibly the New Orleans Saints, who are pretty loaded at the quarterback position, if we're only talking that position-wise. I mean, you got Drew Brees, Hall of Famer. You got Jameis Winston, who, was the first 30-30 guy in the league last year, but led the league in yards. So I think if you get him in a good offense with Sean Payton, he could definitely, I think Sean Payton could, bring some of those interceptions down. He had LASIK eye surgery. He's saying he's seeing better. So maybe if he actually knows who he's throwing to now, he might be able to be in a better spot. And then you got the wild card Taysom Hill, who's just a Swiss Army knife for you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Taysom Hill, I'm excited to see what he can get accomplished this season. But going back to Jameis Winston a little bit, I think the biggest issue with Jameis Winston is obviously his coaching. There's a lot of controversy in the offseason that Jameis Winston hasn't switched like his personal coaching staff since high school, I believe.
That's crazy.
He has the same set of trainers and coaches on the personal level. So a lot of players were giving him some backlash for that. Like, don't use the same guys that you were with in high school.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you see that a lot with NBA players too. I mean, you talk about, at least in like the agent world, you think about like Kawhi Leonard and his uncle. That was a big thing when he hit free agency, and his uncle was basically saying like, oh, don't sign with this team unless they give you this deal. And you see like a lot of either family matters or at least like a bunch of like family relatives or just different like people from like your life when you were coming up in the sport. You see them have a big influence on these athletes that is really kind of just crazy to think about.
Definitely. I mean, you look at a guy like Pat Mahomes, and he even gave the credit last night to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah.
He said in his post-game interview, this guy's a stud. He works hard. I mean, coming from Pat Mahomes, that's saying a lot. And I think a lot of us thought that this Clyde Edwards-Helaire guy that we've heard almost nothing about was going to flop, but he proved himself last night.
So definitely.
Sure.
So let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire and just the Chiefs. So basically, going into the game, there was a lot of talk in fantasy and just a lot of talk in general about how are the Chiefs going to basically get this guy into the offense, because you still have some pretty solid running backs. You have a ton of weapons on that offense. How are you going to factor this running back from LSU into your offense? And I mean, they did find out a way to do it, which did surprise me. Mahomes still looks solid. Doesn't look like he missed a beat. Texans, on the other hand, they're missing DeAndre Hopkins now after the trade. But just in general, it seems like the lack of a preseason really just affected them much more than Kansas City.
To have a guy like Damian Williams coming out of the Super Bowl last season, he's a stud. I mean, Damian Williams knows what he's doing. But to take the one position that Kansas City needed maybe a little bit of upgrading on, and to put it into action with this new rookie, I think Kansas City, they're calling this the run it back tour. I'm gonna have to agree with them.
Yeah, I mean
Pat Mahomes picking up where he left off last night.
I mean, I think he had 3 touchdown passes last
Yeah,
night,
something like
and then
that.
Helaire had one of his own.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're able to really work in a solid run game to Mahomes, then I really don't know how you're going to stop the Chiefs this year, unless half the team comes out with COVID and has to miss a game.
Exactly.
And
that's the only circumstance I can think of.
That's really the only way you're going to be able to stop these guys this year, at least on offense. On defense, I mean, they still got Tyrann Mathieu, they still got Chris Jones. But there's still a lot of questions though on that defense, which almost did cost them the Super Bowl, but then did step up at the end, which was when their defense stepped up,
stepped up last night too.
When their defense can step up, the game is over.
The game is over. Yeah, once that Kansas City team gets momentum, it's over.
I mean, that offense just runs and guns all night. But but what really depends is if the guys on the other side of the ball, if they can step up and even if it's just playing decent, they just have to not be atrocious. And if they can do that, then it's a rout.
And we see a lot of teams that can win one Super Bowl and then not close out being a dynasty. Yeah. And I think it's been
you think of the Atlanta Falcons, you think of the Carolina Panthers, who didn't win one but lost one.
It's been a thought in all of our heads, can Kansas City become that dynasty? And I think in our generation, at least, after New England, they definitely showed the most hope of becoming that next dynasty. Yeah. And last night was just one more step closer to proving that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at New England, who had 2 dynasties in this new millennium. You think of the one in the early 2000s, and you think of the one in the 2010s, and then in between. I mean, it would definitely have been tough for the Broncos to have followed that up. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had Peyton Manning, who retired at the end. I mean, that defense was at its top, but now a lot of those pieces are gone now. You think of, Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. I'm surprised that hasn't been able to run it back to at least one more Super Bowl since '49. Mm-hmm. They did go to 2 straight, so they probably had besides the Patriots and now the Chiefs, they probably had the best shot of becoming that dynasty. Mm-hmm. But before they ended up meeting the wall, that was the Patriots.
After that, after the Legion of Boom dismantled, it was over for the Seahawks. At least for now.
Wilson's still going strong. It seems like he's finally getting.
He better be still going strong because he's my fantasy QB this year.
Yeah, no. So I guess he is finally getting targets to throw to, which is great for him. But it does really stink that the Legion of Boom couldn't have stuck around for a couple more years.
Yeah, it's very possible that team would have three-peated in Super Bowls.
Yeah,
never know.
If the Patriots hadn't stopped them and Malcolm Butler hadn't made that pick, there's a good shot. If they end up having the momentum of 2 Super Bowls on their hand, I think they could have given Carolina possibly a challenge. But it's tough to say though.
It is tough to say, and could they have given Carolina a challenge? We'll never know, obviously, but I think they could have.
Yeah, there's a shot.
At least a challenge.
They did end up losing to them in the playoffs, but I think if they had that, I think that might have just. But if they didn't have that whole Super Bowl hangover effect on them, I think they could have come out of the gates a lot stronger, and maybe they could have been a whole different team.
Definitely.
So, also in football, just like in general, what were your thoughts on the way that it's just being run? The refs now have to wear masks. The coaches all do too. What are your thoughts on the way that some of the new rules being implemented to kind of work with COVID?
Coming off of watching just the NBA for the past however many months, it was definitely a lot different.
Yeah.
Completely different. We can tell that the NFL obviously is not as strict as the NBA when it comes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
We saw
Chris
Collins. Exactly. We saw Chris Collinsworth in the booth, and who was commentating?
Al Michaels.
Both not wearing masks. No divider in between them.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like it. It feels a lot more normal than the NBA, especially with no bubble.
And I think that's what we need right now. In this really just critical time in our lives, I think that just having some sense of normalcy. And
something to look forward to, especially for fans. We don't only have the games to look forward to. We have fantasy football to look forward to.
Yeah, which is definitely big. Obviously fantasy basketball has tried to make its way up, but fantasy football is the king, and I don't see it getting surpassed anytime soon.
That's why we love sports.
Absolutely. Also in the NFL, this Sunday is just. I mean, we're going to get the rest of them on Sunday. There probably is one Monday night game that I can't really think of off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
But on this Sunday, we're going to be seeing a lot of just different things. Now we're going to be seeing Tom Brady in a Bucs jersey. We're going to be seeing Phillip Rivers on the Colts, and we're finally going to get to see what Cam Newton looks like on the field as a New England Patriot.
Yeah, I mean Cam Newton, I'm very excited. Season opener against Miami. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's at least. I think for New England, I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions for them this season, just going in. It's their first season without Brady. They've had a ton of guys opt out on the defensive end, which really carried them last year. So I think Miami, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, they have Brian Flores now, so I guess you could say it's that. But even before that, Miami, even when they've been at the lows of the league, for some reason they can always figure out the Patriots in at least one of the two games of the season.
They've proven it so many times.
And it's tough to say. It's really tough to say. I mean, I hope that with Fitzpatrick on the field, it can kind of be almost like a tune-up game for the Patriots. And but I don't think Bill Belichick's going to treat it like that. But for these guys that didn't have 2 to 3 weeks of a preseason to work with, I think it definitely could be beneficial. I think it's definitely beneficial that they're starting with Miami, and I think the reason it's beneficial is just because of the tough schedule that they have this year. I think they're ranked as having one of the toughest schedules in football.
Miami is definitely missing one thing right now, and that's their quarterback
and Tua.
But it might not be bad for them. I mean, they can use this as a time to work out some of the kinks, especially on defense. They have a lot of new guys, but honestly, Miami scares me as a Patriots fan.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. For some reason they can't beat the Browns. They can't beat any team. But then whenever it comes to the Patriots, they always manage to
always have
something.
them figured out.
Yeah, it's surprising, and I mean now you can attribute it to Brian Flores and him knowing the system a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But this was even happening way before he was in that system.
Definitely.
So it's definitely going to be an interesting day. How do you think Cam's going to do?
I mean, as much as I want Cam to go out there and be a stud right off the bat, he's probably going to have some kinks to work out.
You think there are going to be some hiccups?
Especially in New England. I mean, you can't just march in there and learn the offense immediately. But I do have hope because of the things that Belichick has been saying. We'll see. Cam Newton, I want him to be a stud.
Yeah.
I want him to be a stud.
Same here. I mean, one of the things I'm definitely looking forward to is, I mean, we've seen it occasionally with Bill Belichick in some of the games where Brady isn't on the field. I mean, you saw Jacoby Brissett have basically a 20-plus yard naked boot against the Houston Texans where we shut them out 28-0. I mean, it does seem like that when Brady is on the field, Bill Belichick isn't afraid to open up the playbook a little bit more. So I'm definitely going to be interested in seeing what possible if they have Cam in a wildcat position. Are they going to do some QB draws with him? What are they going to do?
So you think we're going to see a trick play on Sunday?
It's quite possible we see something. I mean, it could be very simple as just a wide receiver reverse to one of the guys. Yeah. But I think you're gonna see some sort of.
I really hope we do because I think last season lacked a lot of that Patriots style play.
Yeah. So I think this Sunday there's a chance you might be seeing some sense of I think the offense is definitely going to look different this year, and I think Belichick, while he does try to keep his cards his pens close to his chest and the cards in his pocket, I think that he will try to, try something on Sunday.
Oh, nothing would make me happier than a flea flicker to Edelman down the sideline.
That would definitely be great.
That would feel like a Patriots team again after last season, especially.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that offense last year was completely lackluster. I mean, after all those guys just left, I mean, it looked like they had a plethora of weapons going in.
You could sense the tension on the Patriots offense last season.
But it looked like that offense was about to just snap and pure anger at any point.
Fresh start, though. Start.
You got to hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the NFL, before we move on a little bit more, I mean, Mahomes looked pretty good last night. We're going to also be seeing Lamar Jackson on Sunday. Who do you think right now is your favorite for the NFL MVP?
I got to give it to Mahomes. I mean, last season Lamar looked very, very deserving of it. Obviously, he did deserve it, but run it back. Mahomes is MVP this year.
I think Mahomes was definitely going to be giving.
He shows no signs of stopping.
Yeah, I think Mahomes was definitely going to be giving Lamar. I mean, last year I think he was even still giving him a run for his money, but he ended up having that knee injury against Denver, and at that point, it really just cemented it as Lamar's.
We all knew the whole season Lamar Jackson is the MVP.
Yeah. I mean,
not a surprise.
I was holding out on Mahomes doing it because I like his play style a little more than Lamar's. I think I think that Mahomes' play style can last longer than Lamar's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Lamar is definitely going to have to shirk his passing game a lot more if he wants to stick around. But I mean, Lamar's a great talent. But I would definitely right now have to say that Mahomes would be my favorite.
But then again, Mahomes is going to be handing off the ball, obviously, a lot more.
Yeah.
So do you think that has anything to do with his MVP odds?
Can you run that back real quick?
Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, he's going to be handing off the ball to him a lot more this season because, I mean, Kansas City has a stud at running back now.
Yeah.
Well, not like they didn't before, but it's cemented in now that this guy's going to be good. Do you think that's going to hurt his MVP odds?
It could, but at the same time, I think that I think that the NFL might be able to just look through that. I mean, if Lamar Jackson is running all over the place, but he's still not having as good a season as Pat Mahomes, I mean, it really is who is the more valuable player to that offense. And I mean, that is tough though. I mean, you could definitely say without Lamar on that Ravens team, they're not going anywhere.
Definitely.
But I mean, you could probably say the same thing about the Chiefs too, even though they have those plethora of weapons.
Mm-hmm. If anything, I think that fact it increases Lamar's odds a little bit. But what if we stray away from quarterbacks a little bit? What do you think Christian McCaffrey's odds are? He was in the run last season. He easily could have been in the talks.
Christian McCaffrey would have to probably have a better season than he had last year. He had a really
better
good
second
season.
half of the season.
Yeah, he had a really good season last year, so that's definitely going to be tough for him to repeat. I mean, guy played like a baller.
Because to win that thing at running back is pretty tough.
That's dedication to win at running back. So it would definitely be tough to see if he could do that. I mean, I don't think the odds are too high because it's been a quarterback for however many years it's been now.
Since probably Adrian Peterson.
Probably was Adrian Peterson who was the last one, and he had an absolutely stellar season the year he won it.
So you think C-Mac's going to have to step up?
He would have to step up big time, but that's not me. That's not me like trying to hate on the guy because I mean the guy's insane. But I think for a running back to win it in this day and age right now, a lot would have to happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. So before we go over to the next thing, let's go through our comments and see what some people are saying.
All right. So we have a lot. Who's winning Game 7 tonight? Celtics or Raptors? Thoughts?
Yeah. So I mean, we were going to that. Before we ended up ending our Wednesday show, we were talking predictions. I know I said that I felt confident in the Celtics, but they were looking a little shaky, and I was nervous about them in that game, and it did prove that they were indeed pretty shaky. I mean, double overtime, they just even though they did play hard enough to get to that second overtime, they weren't deserving of that game. I mean, Kyle Lowry was playing like an absolute madman on the court.
A lot of controversy over Nick Nurse in the corner, though.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely going to be interesting seeing what happens in that and with that. I mean, Nick Nurse should not have been over there near Daniel Tice.
No, you're right. I mean, do you think we're going to see any sort of like fining or anything after that?
There's a chance Nick Nurse could be fined, but it's not going to be for deception or anything. It's just going to be, hey, it's just going to be the NBA saying it could. I mean, it's going to be kind of a pseudo saying, hey, we kind of saw you doing this, don't do it again, or it's going to be a much harsher penalty. But I think the NBA is just going to be like, hey, when you're a coach, you can't be over in that side of the court. So
because I mean, he has his coaching box. He was blatantly in that corner.
He was blatantly outside.
Dark green shirt. I see. Yeah. During that play, I was like, Tatum, what are you doing? But watching it again, I was like, I could have seen how he thought he was a player.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how he thought he was a player, but at the same time, though, I think that if you're going through the game that fast, I mean, I've never been in a situation like that to judge. So I mean, it could just be that you're out there and you see green and you just pass it that way. But I think that from Tatum's perspective, if he's out there willy nilly, just kind of being like, oh, I see green, I'm just going to pass it there. I think that if it is a playoff game, even though it may not feel like it in that bubble environment, I think you do need to just say, all right, I need to make sure
you think he needs to be more sure.
Yeah, I mean, then again, he could have been very sure, and it was just a mistake, and I completely get it. But at the same time, though, I mean, it was a green shirt, but at the same time, it wasn't like he was literally
No, you're
wearing
right.
the Celtics
And
green.
I somewhat agree with you, but I mean, in that situation,
But as
you're,
a Celtics
you're trying
fan-
to sell. You're trying to sell the fake. You're trying to
Oh, no,
make it seem
definitely.
like you're going up to the basket. The last thing you're going to want to do is look over to the corner. That's going to sell your pass away.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with
Mhm.
you. So I mean, I'm definitely mad at Nick Nurse with that for a fan standpoint. He should not have been over there, but it is a complex situation, and I mean Tatum. I mean, and Tatum, who I adore. I think that you just gotta if it takes that extra second of being sure, then I mean that could be the game.
Yeah, and I mean back to the question a little bit. Who's winning Game 7? I think that play and the other things that went down at the end of that Game 6. I think that's going to give the Celtics the momentum to.
Yeah,
to win
we
Game
had someone in
7
the
tonight.
comments basically saying that the refs who I forget what the score was, but apparently it's like whenever the Tony Brothers refs are on the when Tony Brothers is reffing the game, basically the Celtics I think are 3-13 in the last games that he's done it, and the Raptors have a giant winning record whenever he's on the court. So. But apparently he's not reffing tonight, which if that's the case and the Celtics are not doing too well, it really stinks when you have to look at a ref's record compared to a team.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the
It really does, and I mean it's not new. We've been seeing this in the NBA all season, especially in the bubble. I mean the reffing has just been atrocious in my opinion. Props to the NFL, by the way. The refereeing was very good last night.
Yeah,
I saw
give
no
it to
issues
them.
with it.
I'll give it to them. Yeah, probably the props if they're of the little refereeing is that there weren't too many fouls to be called. They
Mhm.
really kind of did. They really
Yeah,
kind of did
clean play.
just let the guys play, which
Mhm.
which I'm always a fan.
I mean, there were 2 Kansas City touchdowns they had to take back.
Yeah.
And I mean, at first glance, I thought they were touchdowns as well. But looking at those replays, those are tough calls to make. And, if anything, I really hope that the NFL referees improve because there are times when they can mess up too.
Yeah.
But nothing compared to the NBA, especially this season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the NBA has always had its controversial refs. I mean, you remember Pat Donahue, I believe it was, who was betting on games as a ref and was calling and fixing games.
Yep.
So I mean, NBA's always had their fair share of bad refs. I'm not saying that these refs are doing that, but it's definitely
It's a possibility.
It's always a possibility, and I don't want to get into conspiracy theories on this
way.
show. I don't think that's what this show is. But I think that as a player, you just gotta. I think that you just have to be ready for anything, and hope and just play clean enough.
Yeah.
And if the refs mess it up, then you deal with them afterwards.
As a player, the last thing you want to do is blame a referee, but sometimes
It's the reality of the situation.
It almost feels like you have to in some cases.
Yeah. It's definitely tough, but the Raptors have pushed the C's to a Game 7.
What do you predict that score is going to be?
I think the Raptors. I mean, you saw them. They do have the momentum on their side of fighting through that double overtime. I think they're going to come out. I think the Raptors are going to come out strong, but I think the Celtics. I don't want to make predictions just yet. I do think it is going to be a close game. I'm not sure about final scores yet, but it's going to be a close game.
Definitely. I can't really put my finger on a score prediction either.
Yeah, score predictions.
Usually these Eastern Conference games are a lot lower scoring than the West.
Yeah,
but if anything, it's gonna be 110s, 120s.
Yeah, I agree. Also in the NBA news, for a team that is no longer in the bubble, surprisingly, even though the Oklahoma City Thunder gave it a good run. They decided to part ways with Coach Billy Donovan after a good couple seasons. You brought this up on the last show before we ended up ending, but we really didn't have enough time to talk about it in full. Mm-hmm. So I decided we should probably talk about it now. What do you think about that move? I mean, Billy Donovan was for the Thunder. He was a pretty solid coach. He saw the Katie Westbrook years. He saw. I think he was still there. I think he was there when Harden was there and when they went to the finals. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been through it all with. He's been through it all with them, and I mean, I would have thought that for the job that he did with the Thunder, I would have thought that they would have definitely wanted to have him back. I mean, a lot of people considered this to be a rebuild year for them. They had Chris Paul, who a lot of people thought was going to be released. They had a lot of these guys who were young, and they just didn't have a lot of faith in. I think for the fact that they did as well as they did, I thought that was going to at least give Billy Donovan at least one more year as the coach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was definitely shocked by the move. I'm hearing both that they mutually parted ways. I'm hearing that Billy Donovan wanted to leave. I don't really know whose choice it was, but if the Raptors have proved anything, it's that you can always do better with your coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't put my finger on his
Dwayne
name.
Casey.
Dwayne Casey.
Yeah, so,
wins Coach of the Year.
Was Coach of the
And
Year.
then,
They
fire him. Nick Nurse comes in and he wins a title.
Yeah.
Sometimes a franchise just needs that little change of scenery at the coaching position.
the addition of one Kawhi Leonard also helps in that. Helps in that field.
That's true.
But I mean, I completely see where you're going because even after Kawhi Leonard's been gone, I mean, you don't have DeMar DeRozan anymore.
But this guy's still winning Coach of the Year, and obviously that front office can see something with him. Maybe they wouldn't have won that finals if Nick Nurse didn't come in. We would never know, but it just proves that you can always do better in your coaching.
I completely agree. I mean, you look at a lot of these teams. I mean, you've seen a lot of moves happen recently. You saw Steve Nash to the Nets. One of the moves I was definitely surprised about, though, I mean, we didn't talk about this, was Tyronn Lue, I believe, going to the 76ers.
Not a good move.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I mean, they fired Brett Brown, which I get because, I mean, he was the coach for the process era, and for the process, he seemed kind of like the guy that it was like, you know what, if we're going to get out of this, I think that this is the type of thing that, I think that this is the type of guy that we want to have, like, lead a young group of young guys and, you know, get them to prosper. And when they fired him, I was like, okay, I think that, you know, they're going to try to get some guy who's going to go in there and take charge and, you know, really get these guys to step up. Tyronn Lue,
I don't know if he's that guy.
Yeah, I really don't.
I really don't know.
I mean, Tyronn Lue, I mean, you give him credit. He won an NBA championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but personally, I really think LeBron.
Well, we all know it was LeBron.
LeBron was really coaching that team.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
because you look at what Tyronn Lue was able to do on the Cavs after. What was he able to do? Get fired?
Yeah, really. That's it. I mean, props to Tyronn Lue. I mean, whatever coach is seeing him. I mean, you know, I give him props for, you know, being in the league. But I really, if the 76ers had a LeBron type figure, I mean, I'm not saying someone of LeBron's caliber, but a guy who could take charge of the team. I mean, you look at the 76ers. They have Tobias Harris, Embiid, Simmons, who are all great players, but there isn't really that one guy who's going to step up and say, I'm the guy in charge. Some people could say it's Simmons. Some could say it's Embiid.
They have those really good players. They don't have the different players.
And I think Tyronn Lue is the type of guy that if you have that one figurehead on the team, Tyronn Lue can look to that guy and say, okay, you go and you go take over and like you kind of run the team, and I'll make sure that things don't try to go downhill. When you have kind of these guys that, I mean, it's not like they're all very demanding personalities, but at the same time, you know, none of those personalities are dominant enough to say that, you know what, I'm the guy who has to lead this team.
I really think it's going to be an ugly pitcher in Philadelphia.
I think Tyronn Lue is just like, I don't know if he's going to be able to rally the troops and just say to these guys, hey, let's run this thing. I mean, I don't know if he has that in him.
It's very clear that he doesn't have authority as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see unless he completely changes who he is as a coach, and maybe he will. I mean, you see a lot of coaches being able to be adaptable, you know, be able to do stuff like that. You see players be able to do that. If he can do that as a coach and turn into this guy who becomes demanding, that is what Philly needs. They need a guy who can say, hey guys, we need to step up. Otherwise, you know, this process, it was all for naught.
I really do think that this hiring of Tyronn Lue will be the downfall of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very clear now that the process is far from being successful.
Yeah.
So maybe we're right for not trusting the process. That's my opinion.
I mean, the process, you know, not only in the process is there now this questionable move at coach, but at the same time there's also, but at the same time with the move at coach, you've seen a lot of you know their entire idea of the process was, we're going to tank for, like, what was it, like 7 years that they tanked for? Like they tanked for a long time because they were just a middle of the road team that was getting eliminated in the first round or barely, or, you know, just missing the playoffs by like a couple games. And they decided, you know, we're just going to be awful, and we're going to like acquire all these picks. And you know what? They got Embiid, but he was hurt for, I think, 2 years before he even got to play. They got Ben Simmons, who's had his injury problems and still can't shoot a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
You know,
very dominant otherwise.
You know, they've made some other moves. I mean, you think of the Jimmy Butler move, which seemed solid at the time, but he's not there anymore.
Not the right fit.
You think of Tobias Harris, who actually I'll give him credit for that because they were able to lock him down, but I think that's just a lot of money for him.
Do you think these players?
But really, besides that though, before you go in, I mean, I'll give them credit for Ben Simmons and Embiid and a couple other guys. They have made their fair share of horrible moves in the draft.
Right.
I mean, you look at Michael Carter-Williams, who they thought was going to be the point guard of the future. You look at Jahlil Okafor, who they thought was going to be paired up with Embiid and was going to be doing stuff. And really, while they did get lucky on these two guys, if they didn't, this process would have been one of the biggest disasters we have ever seen. And it's only because they tanked so long for so bad for so long is the fact that they were at least able to get at least two solid guys.
Yeah, and when you tank that long and you're bad for that long,
you gotta hope you at least get someone.
You gotta. I feel like the odds should be on your side at some point.
Yeah,
but
they had to have landed at least some guys.
Do you think there's one driving force on the Sixers that is causing the downfall of all these players that they're going through? The coaches, players, everybody.
I think that personally,
one source of toxicity on the team.
I don't know if it's a source of toxicity, but as I was saying with the Tyronn Lue thing, I think there does need to be at least, I think that either Simmons and Embiid or at least one of them needs to step up and say, hey guys, we really need to step up our game. And it starts in the locker room. And I mean, I don't really see. I mean, Embiid kind of seems like Embiid is an incredibly devoted individual, and so is Ben Simmons, and I'm not discounting with that. But they don't seem. But from what I've seen of them, I don't know if they're the type of guys that just rally the troops. They don't come across me.
They strike me as very good players, but not good leaders. And you need that on a team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the LeBrons of the world, even you look at the Currys of the world, all these other players, and they seem to have something that maybe even if you want to talk about them being toxic in different ways, they are able to rally a team and get some guys behind them. I mean,
they all show very good traits of being good leaders, and I guess that's why they're great. Their greatness is right in front of them, and I don't think Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons can necessarily be there, at least yet. I don't know. You can always learn as a player, but
you can always become. I mean, it's tough to become a leader, but you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to improve your game than it is to improve your leadership abilities and your mental game. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if they can do it, then I think good things can happen for Philly. But I think because they don't have that guy yet, and because Tyronn Lue is the type of guy that he's best when he could feed off an alpha personality and can say, hey, you know what, you're killing it out there, run this team, and we can do good things. Because they don't have that, I don't think that this move I don't think that the Tyronn Lue move in Philly is a good one personally.
I'm looking at these comments right here. Bucks are eyeing Chris Paul apparently.
Really?
I guess so.
That would be a very interesting move. I mean,
I don't know how reliable that source is.
Yeah, I really don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, the Bucks. A lot of people have been talking about how, you saw some people comparing Giannis to Pippen rather than Jordan. I mean, I don't want to be making comparisons like that, but I do think that I don't think Chris Middleton is that secondary piece that is going to help Giannis and the Bucks break through.
Way.
I mean, no discredit to Middleton, but I think that Giannis just needs something a little more top tier if he can't elevate his game.
I loved Max Kellerman's take on Giannis. Did you see it?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
He was saying Giannis is not Scottie Pippen. Giannis is Shaq that hasn't found his Kobe yet, and I completely agree.
I do agree with that take. That does make a lot of sense. And but at the same time though, I don't think Chris Paul is that Kobe, especially at the age of 36.
No, I do agree with that, but
while he could be, I think he'd be taking Bledsoe's spot on the team.
Mm-hmm.
While he could be a good veteran presence and could teach Giannis a couple things, it'd be fun to see them run, be on the court together.
Yeah.
But I think Chris Paul could definitely help, get some assists over to Giannis, and you could see some form of a lob city in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I just don't know how successful that's really going to be. Chris Paul did show a lot of fire, but
yeah, he showed it on the Thunder.
I just don't know if Giannis wants. Unless Chris Paul was to go there on a cheap deal, otherwise that changes everything. But if Giannis and the Bucks do want to take it to somewhere else, if Chris Paul was a couple years younger, you could also make that argument too. But I think you just need someone younger who can be more electric with Giannis.
The Bucks keep coming up short. Obviously, I talk about it all the time. Oh, I do think Giannis is the real deal. I don't think he's there yet, though. But I really do think someone like Chris Paul could benefit the Bucks, especially in the locker room. I think for a team that keeps coming up short, it all starts in the locker room. And who's better than rallying up your locker room than a veteran? Chris Paul.
Yeah.
How old did you say he was?
I believe he's 35, 36.
35, 36. I mean, look what he did on that Thunder team this year. He took them from nothing to something.
Yeah.
And who's to say he could never do that on the Bucks? I like the move. We'll see, though. What else we got here? If Mahomes stays healthy...
Paul is 35.
35. You got this. If Mahomes stays healthy, he will have a long career. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I agree. I think that the guy's got a killer arm. I mean, as long as he stays healthy, like it's saying. I mean, obviously, when he gets older, his legs won't be what they were.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he seems like the type of quarterback that he could. I think him more than Lamar could learn to be more of a pocket passer as he gets older. But I think that he will have some sense of agility without injury.
He's definitely having a longer career than Lamar Jackson.
I think so. Unless Jackson overhauls
just because of that arm presence.
Yeah, I think so. So I completely agree with that take. I think that's what I have in NBA so far. Yep. So that's what I have in the NBA so far. Let's jump over to the MLB. I know you're not the biggest MLB guy, but there were a couple things that I was interested in. So I was looking around. And I saw a story apparently that Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw was very critical of the MLB's new extra innings rule this year, well, you may not know about the new extra innings rule, but with code and everything, baseball is trying a bunch of new kind of like rules and ways to kind of speed up the game. And one of the ways they're doing that is I'm not the biggest fan of this, but apparently in the 10th inning now, when it gets to extra innings, what they're going to be doing from now on is they're going to be putting in at the start of each half inning, they're going to put a runner on second base to start the half inning with no outs. There's just going to be a guy on second. And, even though the Dodgers, and so the team that he's on, even though they're 5-1 of those extra inning games, Clayton Kershaw is still not a fan of it. He said it's not real baseball. It's fine for this year, but I hope we never do it again. So I do think it's one of the things that's interesting about it is that you could look at it if it was the other way around and they were 1-5, people would probably just say, you're just upset that you can't win those games. You know what? You got to stick in it longer. But I mean, the Dodgers are killing it in the extra innings. So I do find it. I think it's pretty telling when a guy like Kershaw, his team's winning. They're doing very well in the NL West, even with the San Diego Padres team hot on their trail. What do you think about this extra inning rule? Are you a fan of it or no?
I agree with Kershaw. I mean, anytime you said they're just going to place a runner on second at the start of the 10th inning.
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of like wiffle ball, it's just going to be some like backyard like wiffle ball kind of thing where it's like the start of the inning. There's just a guy on second. I mean, it kind of seems like some little league tournament rule.
I just think there are more obvious ways you can speed up the game of baseball than doing that.
I do too. I mean, people have talked about pitch clocks and all this stuff, but
even more obvious than pitch clocks.
I completely agree. But I think if they want to try it for a year, I mean, there have been a lot of changes this year that I haven't been a fan of from MLB. I mean, they've talked about the 3-batter minimum for pitchers, which I think is bogus. I think that MLB managers should be able to utilize their bullpen any way they can, even though that might slow the game down. I think that it's strategy. Mm-hmm. I think that you should be able to use guys however you want, and that shouldn't affect the game. Mm-hmm. Another thing that they changed for this year is I think to avoid injuries, at least in the NL. It's a universal DH this year, so they're not having pitchers back, which, I mean, obviously it's going to provide a little pop for them. But you know what, I do love seeing pitchers who can rake. I mean, it's always fun seeing a guy like Madison Bumgarner or Zach Greinke hit one out of the park. Even though it's a rarity, it's still fun to see. And they did that. They did those moves, and then they also have the runner on second base. So I hope that some of these changes are kind of repealed back when more fans are in the stands and it's a more normal kind of setting. But I mean, I get it for a COVID atmosphere, but really anything other than that, I don't want to see these rules kind of staying any longer.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you talk about speeding up the game of baseball. I think there's a fine line between speeding up the game so that more people will watch and speeding up the game for other reasons. I mean, maybe don't speed up the game to try to keep your fan base true and keep the game the same way. Or you can speed it up and try to cater to these needs of people that you want to watch. You don't even know if they're actually going to watch. But I think baseball has probably just struggled to find that in between.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's personally just another thing. I mean, I know you can't blame Rob Manfred for everything, but I mean, he is the guy that, he goes up in front of the podium and represents that brand every day. And I'm just going to say that I just don't think that it's a good move for, baseball to be doing. I think that, your audience is very niche, and, you have a lot of purist fans, and, if they still want the game one way, I don't think that you're going to be winning new fans over by, like, you don't win new fans over by saying, hey, we're going to be putting guys on second base, start new innings. You win fans over by, I mean, obviously
marketing your players correctly.
Yeah, you got to market your players better.
Baseball has other issues.
Yeah, I think that there's other issues other than how do we turn a 10-inning game into a shorter game. I think that overtimes exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to fit. I think that there's better ways to do it, and I think baseball just needs to look in the mirror and realize that they have to do this.
They're focusing on the wrong issues.
That's at least what I think. This isn't really baseball news, but it kind of was a little bit in baseball news. The Oakland A's games and the San Francisco Giants games, I believe it was either Wednesday or Thursday, the skies over the stadiums, because of the wildfires out there, it was just an eerie kind of glowing orange skies, and it was very weird to watch.
Terrifying.
I don't know if you've been seeing some of the pictures coming out of there, but it's crazy out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at those, and I can't even imagine that. It's truly it scares me to think about being in that stadium, or even just in San Francisco and looking up at the sky, and it's just being orange by a norm.
I mean, it's orange, almost red in some areas. I mean, from what I've heard, it's different in some areas, especially, if there's fires nearby, obviously there's smoke and the breathing quality isn't going to be, that good. But from what I've heard is, at least in the city, the air quality isn't as bad as it would look to be, which, thank God. Mm-hmm. But, it's unless this clears up soon, you could start to see, mass evacuations just happening from the area. Mm-hmm. And, that's a very frightening thing that you could see happening, especially with sports being in these areas.
It's frightening, and it sparks a lot of controversy and debate over the environment, but we won't get into that. But, you almost feel like this is just part of the deal you sign when you move to California.
Yeah, it's crazy. Comedian Bill Burr said it best. California, they don't have a water supply. Yeah. It's just a mess out there.
The place is basically about to detach from the rest of the states.
It's a tinderbox.
Yeah.
I think that there's just so much going wrong out there. You just gotta hope for the best for the people that are trying to get out.
It literally is like its own country.
Yeah, it's insane out there. I'm hoping for the best that the people that are in danger. I hope everyone gets out. I hope everyone stays safe. But it is definitely a crazy situation going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely insane.
Insane. We've seen wildfires in our lifetime, but nothing like that.
Yeah. So let's do a little transition over to also in the pop culture world so far. In the first time since for the first time since the '90s, McDonald's has done a co-op with an individual. Not since the McJordan of the '90s have they done a co-op. We usually don't talk about too much stuff outside of sports, but I figured that
But we can't not talk about this.
I don't think you can't not. So McDonald's recently just did a collab with rapper Travis Scott. They now have the Travis Scott meal.
Travis Scott meal.
And you know what? Well, I haven't had it yet. Carter here has tried the meal, and
Travis Scott meal.
It's definitely weird seeing that there's a rapper that you listen to have a meal. It's the first time that they've had one since Michael Jordan. Do you think that for the first meal being named after someone since them, do you think Travis Scott is
I think Travis Scott's the perfect guy.
You do?
Perfect, yeah.
Really? What makes you think that Travis Scott is the guy?
He's the Michael Jordan of rap. Well, I mean,
No.
I don't know if we go that
No.
far. At least not yet. One day, he very well could be.
I mean, I love Travis Scott, but oh, come on.
No.
No.
One day, he will be. Mark my words. Travis Scott, he's great. I mean, he's so different.
You're kidding me.
No, Travis Scott has.
You're kidding.
He's placed his own vibe on music,
Oh
and
my
he's
God.
brought himself up from the beginning. And he's different, and everyone's copying his vibe now. He made his own. You know what I mean? He's original.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. He has reinvented.
But no, he's not the Michael Jordan of rap. At least not. At least not yet. Okay, I think he could get there one day. One day.
All right. So
you know what? I think he will get there one day.
Okay.
He will.
Okay. So you had the Travis Scott meal.
I had it.
Before you give us your rating, describe it real quick.
Describe it.
So, like what is what comes when you order this meal at your local McDonald's?
When you order the Travis Scott meal at McDonald's, you get a quarter. It's basically a quarter pounder.
Yeah.
Well, it's Travis Scott's order. It's a quarter pounder with cheese. I think it comes with bacon, a bunch of other things, and the most special part of it is the fries come with barbecue sauce because he apparently loves dipping his fries in barbecue sauce. And I gotta say, I never have thought about dipping my fries in barbecue sauce, but it was great. I mean,
really?
The burger, it was like no other McDonald's burger I've ever had in my life. 10 out of 10. It was amazing. It didn't even mess up my stomach like McDonald's mostly does, but it was good. This guy's special if he's doing collabs with McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, he's done collabs with a lot of people. I mean,
we need to talk more pop culture on this show.
Honestly, we probably should
mix it in a little bit.
You know, it's always fun to talk pop culture and little things like that. You know, if you had to think of like either an athlete or a music artist, who's the next guy you'd love to see like get a meal named after him or something like that? Is there a rapper, an athlete that you'd love to see have?
Honestly, depending on what Cam Newton can do in New England, I want to see him get his own Dunkin' coffee.
Oh, jeez.
Why Charlie D'Amelio?
Oh, yeah, true.
It might as well be Cam Newton instead, right?
Yeah, I mean, at least get the quarterback of your team.
Nothing fits better than in New England, Cam Newton with his own. Tom Brady never did that.
Yeah.
That's some disrespect to Tom Brady.
Yeah, you could throw some shade that way.
You could.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, is there anyone in the music industry you'd love to see?
Oh, in the music industry. I can't really put my finger on anyone right now.
You don't want a Gunna McDonald's meal, do you? I know you're a fan, but
I think Gunna would more, maybe a Gunna.
Taco Bell order?
KFC.
Taco Bell order?
Yeah, Taco Bell, yeah.
I feel like he could do a Taco Bell order.
I think he could, too. Definitely.
Oh,
but,
jeez.
yeah, the Travis Scott meal. It was amazing.
Oh.
I gotta say, I kind of felt silly ordering it. Can I get one Travis Scott meal, please? But
yeah, it does. It just sounds kind of foolish.
It happened. I consumed it. It was good. The receipts on my wall.
That's always good to hear. Oh, jeez. You know what? It's definitely going to be very. I mean,
why didn't you try it today?
I'm not a big burger guy.
Not a big burger guy.
I'm not a big burger
especially
guy.
from McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was worried about that too. I really was because every time I get a McDonald's burger, it just does something wrong.
Yeah.
And I was worried, but I had to try it.
Yeah, no, I completely feel it.
Yeah.
I completely feel you. It's currently 7:54. Before we go down to the wire, we have some big news about the podcast before we end up going off for the night. In terms of how you guys receive this podcast, Brian Versey has recently told us that we're possibly going to be able to get this to you guys in other formats, possibly podcast form. We're looking into it right now. There's a chance you guys might be able to access this show. However you guys access your podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, what would be better than Down to the Wire on Spotify?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd love to be driving, listen to it, or even if Jake has to listen to it on Apple Music, which is an inferior streaming service.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it'll be there. It'll be there.
We're trying to see how that goes,
mm-hmm.
and also we're not sure about the date of it yet, but I reached out and we're gonna be doing we had an interview with Coach Casey Cummins on the show a couple weeks ago. We're our next big interview is going to be with MLB pitcher James Karinchak of the Cleveland Indians. We're not sure of the date yet, but we're going to be trying to work that out pretty soon. And you know what? James has been killing it this year. It's his second year in the bigs, and he's just been absolutely dominant for Cleveland this year.
We're excited. I mean, this guy's a star, and have him on the show.
He's an up and coming stud. I mean, he's a Bryant alum. The guy has an absolute the guy's curveball is absolutely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely going to be an interesting thing. It's definitely going to be awesome when we can get him on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I definitely am too. But you know what? It's about that time. It is currently 7:56.
I think we're down to the wire.
I think we are officially down to the wire, which means we're going to go real quick. We're going to go through everything that we talked about in this past hour, and before we head off for the night. So to start off, we started in the NFL. Football's back, people. We talked Pat Mahomes, just picking up right up from where he left off. We talked Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Proven to be a solid fantasy back. He seems to be doing pretty well.
Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
if he can keep it up, I think the Chiefs are going to go places. And
it only goes up from here.
I think so. For Kansas City, it's going to be if he's on top, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be an unstoppable force this year. We talked about the new look of football in the pandemic. Andy Reid came out there looking like he was from outer space. It's definitely going to be an interesting sight to see how is Bill Belichick going to look on Sunday. Is he just going to be in his own in his own chamber?
I didn't even think
with
about
the tablet?
that. Yeah.
It's definitely going to be interesting seeing how that's going to look on Sunday. And then we also talked about run-ins for MVP. We're both thinking that if Pat Mahomes stays healthy, he's just going to run away with that this year.
Mm-hmm.
We jumped over to the NBA. We talked about the Raptors. The Raptors sending the Celtics to a Game 7. That's going to be on tonight. We're going to be watching that. But best of luck to the Celtics. We hope they can close it out tonight. We're
Please.
really hoping we can at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Jumped over to the OKC Thunder, who let go of Billy Donovan. We talked about that move. We talked about Tyronn Lue to the Sixers, and how we don't think that really is the best move for that locker room. In baseball, we talked about Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw criticizing the new extra inning rule. Just doesn't feel like real baseball to him. And we also talked about the California wildfires, just looking like some making it look real eerie out.
Terrifying.
Real eerie out in California.
Mm-hmm.
Best of luck to anyone who's dealing with stuff out there. We wish you all the best. Hope that just get through this. We cannot say that it is awful out there. We hope that
it's just another thing to add to the long list of
2020 has been a ridiculously horrible year. Just stay safe, do whatever you can, and we're praying for you. And finally we also we decided to talk about the Travis Scott meal.
Travis Scott meal.
And we decided to just talk about your personal review of it.
Yes.
Interesting for a McDonald's meal to be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll give him that. And then finally, we talked about the way that we're going to try to improve with podcasting and the James Karinchak interview, which will be coming to you at some point. There will be a post up on Instagram at some point to let you guys know about when that'll be coming. We'll give you guys some notice in advance. But you know what? It's almost 8 o'clock. I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Carter Adams. And this is Real tonight.
Yeah, and this has been Down to the Wire. It's been great talking with you guys. Have a good one. We'll see you.
Go Celtics.